Before we reach the moment when the night sky erupts into white heat, we need to understand the people standing on that deck. This is not only a mission for pilots and captains, it is a weight carried by the maintainers turning wrenches at 2 a.m. and by the families back home in places like Norfolk and San Diego, waiting for one call that tells them their sailor is coming home safe. Then the order comes through. ARIM 162 ESSM leaves the vertical launch cell, jumping from 0 to nearly 2,000 miles per hour, almost the speed of a rifle round, before the ship's wake has even settled behind it. The intercept happens 3 miles out. A sudden flash lights the horizon, and fragments scatter across the dark water. But that was only the opening move. The real problem sits 2 miles to the east, the Al-Sadar, a 150,000-ton Suezmax oil tanker. On paper, it is flying a neutral flag. On our sensors, it is broadcasting something it should not be broadcasting. A low, unnatural hum rolls beneath the surface. This is not just a tanker. 4 Mark VI patrol boats break away from the USS Carney. Their twin diesel engines scream as they cut through the black swells at 45 knots. There is no room for negotiation now. As the boats close inside 200 yards, the civilian bridge of the Al-Sadar begins to change. Hidden panels slide back. Concealed 12.7mm heavy machine guns appear from behind the shutters. Red tracer lines rip across the water, drawing a glowing net through the darkness. The Mark 38 25mm gun systems on the patrol boats answer immediately. High-energy 25mm rounds strike the tanker's railing, forcing the hostile positions back. The Mark VI hulls slam hard against the side of the massive tanker. Pneumatic grapnels fire from the deck rails, their steel claws biting into the superstructure. Mechanical winches tighten the lines. The boarding team moves fast. Breaching charges are placed against the primary hatch. A split second later, a pressure wave buckles the steel and opens the way into the hold. Inside, the passage leads deep into the ballast tanks. Below the waterline, the hull is hiding something far worse than contraband. Dozens of pressurized steel cylinders, the parasite pods, are magnetically clamped to the exterior plating. Each one gives off a low-frequency vibration that runs through the ship like a mechanical heartbeat. Then the Al-Sadar groans. The magnetic clamps release in perfect sequence. The pods activate. Internal propellers spin up. One by one, they begin tracking the acoustic signature of the USS Carney. They are no longer cargo. They are autonomous underwater threats moving at 40 knots. On the USS Carney, the AN/SQQ-89 sonar suite lights up with 20 distinct contacts emerging from beneath the tanker. The conclusion is immediate. The hull is under direct threat. The destroyer's 4 gas turbine engines spool to maximum RPM, pushing 100,000 horsepower through the shafts. The 9,000-ton Arleigh Burke-class destroyer leans into a hard, high-speed turn. Deck plates groan under the force. On the starboard side, the Mark 32 torpedo tubes swivel into position. Lightweight torpedoes eject into the water, and their active sonar heads go live the instant they submerge. The Mark 54 seekers lock onto the incoming pods. A chain of underwater impacts follows. Shock waves race through the water and strike the Carney's hull. The internal power grid flickers as the ship absorbs the vibration, but the engines keep roaring. And while the sonar team is still processing the remaining underwater contacts, the Iranian coastline comes alive. Radar signatures bloom across the display. The underwater strike was only the first layer of a much larger engagement. 50 Iranian fast attack craft, bog hammers, burst out of the coastal haze. Their fiberglass hulls race across the water at 50 miles per hour, moving in a dense swarm formation. They are armed with 107mm rockets, and the launch cycle begins almost immediately. Smoke trails fill the air. The USS Carney's Mark 45 5-inch gun on the foredeck starts firing. A 70-pound shell leaves the barrel every 3 seconds. Each impact tears through the lightweight boats with overwhelming kinetic force. But the swarm is thick, and the boats are using the massive body of the Al-Sadar to block the destroyer's line of sight. Then, an A-10C Thunderbolt enters the airspace at 800 feet, moving at 345 miles per hour. A small decoy drone would not work here. Iranian coastal defenses are using an automatic frequency identification system that filters out small remote signatures almost instantly. To mislead the S-300 radar, the mission needs something larger, louder, and hotter. It needs a target with a major radar cross-section and a powerful heat signature. Only a heavy manned airframe can sell the illusion. To the S-300 search radar near Bandar Abbas, the A-10C looks like a large, slow-moving prize. The A-10C's ALQ-131 electronic countermeasures pod shifts into active emission. It broadcasts a high-energy signal that imitates the radar cross-section of a B-52 bomber. The S-300 radar snaps 180 degrees and locks onto the Warthog. A high-frequency tracking beam paints the jet's titanium skin. Inside the cockpit, the radar warning receiver gives the pilot a continuous lethal tone. The A-10C does not turn away. It holds its heading. At that moment, the Warthog becomes a flying digital recorder, capturing every frequency and pulse the S-300 uses to maintain its lock. The data is time-stamped and sent through Link 16 directly to the USS Carney and the Carrier Strike Group. Every hidden coastal battery that tries to track the Warthog is revealing itself in real time. Its position, its behavior, and its operating frequencies are exposed by the very act of targeting the aircraft. Before we go further, remember who is carrying this mission. Not just the pilots, not just the commanders. It is the crew on the deck. It is the maintainers working deep into the night. It is the families at home, staring at their phones, hoping for one message that says everything is still okay. And to the veterans watching, you know that feeling. You know what it means to look at a dark horizon and understand that the next few minutes can change everything. If you served on an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer or worked the flight line for the Warthog, leave your ship's hull number or your squadron in the comments. Let the next generation see who stood the watch before them. The Iranians take the bait. Two F-14A Tomcat interceptors roar off the runway at Bandar Abbas. Their afterburners ignite and they close the distance at 1,400 miles per hour. The lead pilot centers the Warthog on his display and flips the trigger guard. He has an AIM-54 Phoenix ready to launch. In his mind, this is about to be the easiest shot of his life. What he does not know is that 4 miles above him, two F-35B Lightning II stealth fighters have been holding a silent orbit for 41 minutes. They are watching through the AN/AAQ-37 distributed aperture system, a ring of 6 infrared sensors that sees the world in heat. To the F-35 pilots, the Tomcat engines are glowing like signal flares in the dark. The lead Tomcat fires the AIM-54 Phoenix. The 1,000-pound missile accelerates to roughly 3,000 miles per hour, about 5 times the speed of a commercial airliner. It arcs high into the sky, preparing to dive toward the A-10. 12 seconds to impact. 10, 9, 8. The F-35B pilots make their move. They activate the AN/APG-81 radar and drive a focused beam of energy into the Tomcat's fire control system. They use digital radio frequency memory jamming, capturing the Iranian radar pulse, reshaping it, and sending it back with false information. Suddenly, the Iranian pilot sees 10 different Warthogs on his screen. Then, the radar display goes black. The AIM-54 Phoenix loses its lock. It becomes an unguided piece of hardware, tumbling away from the fight and dropping into the water 5 miles short of the target. Before the Iranian pilot can process what happened, an AIM-12 OD Amram leaves the internal bay of the lead F-35B. The missile moves at nearly 3,000 miles per hour. The second Iranian wingman never sees the warning in time. The proximity fuse activates 30 feet from the wing. The Tomcat breaks apart in a bright flash and the wreckage spins down toward the Gulf. While the air battle unfolds overhead, the situation on the Al-Sadar gets worse. The boarding team is pinned on the deck. Then they hear the deep sound of heavy hydraulics. Massive steel deck plates in front of them begin sliding back. A swarm of Shahed 136 drones, the same type seen in Ukraine, begins spooling up. They do not need a runway. They launch straight from rails built into the tanker's deck. The first 5 clear the ship and turn toward the USS Carney. The Carney slews its Mark 45 5-inch gun toward the tanker. The target is the launch rail system. A proximity-fused high-energy shell detonates above the drone rack. The blast wave tears through the carbon fiber wings of the remaining drones before they can launch. But the hostile force has one final escalation plan. The fast attack boats circling the destroyer realize their air cover is gone. They stop maneuvering and shift into a one-way attack profile. 6 boats, each carrying heavy payloads, turn toward the Carney's midsection. The ship becomes a wall of fire. The Mark 38 cannon crews fire until the barrels glow red. 5 boats are stopped before reaching the ship, but the 6th keeps coming. It is closing at 50 miles per hour and is now less than 100 yards away. Then the failing CIWS takes over. The crew calls it R2D2 with a bad attitude. It fires 20mm tungsten rounds at 75 rounds per second, sounding like a massive chainsaw tearing through the air. The final impact happens so close that the shockwave cracks the Carney's bridge windows and throws burning fiberglass across the deck. Then the Iranian coast plays its last card. 3 Ghadir cruise missiles launch from shore. These are heavy anti-ship weapons designed to threaten major surface vessels. They fly low, skimming just above the water to stay beneath the radar horizon. The USS Carney's AN/SPY-1D radar locks on. But the forward cells are out of SM-2 missiles, and there is no time to reload. The ship has to rely on the Phalanx CIWS again. The first missile is intercepted. The second breaks apart moments later. The third performs a pop-up maneuver. It climbs suddenly, then dives toward the bridge. The CIWS tracks it all the way up. The vibration from the gun is so intense that everyone aboard can feel it in their teeth. The intercept happens only 100 yards above the hull. A huge orange flash rolls over the deck, and the heat is strong enough to damage the paint on the superstructure. But the USS Carney is still standing. The remaining Iranian boats see the cruise missiles fail. Then they see the Super Hornets arriving from the carrier strike group. They understand the fight is over. They turn and race back toward the coast, leaving the tanker behind. The boarding team secures the bridge of the Al-Sadar. The crew gives up immediately. They were not ordinary mariners. They were technicians sent to manage the launch systems. We take control of the ship. We take control of the cargo. The cleanup lasts through the morning. An MH-60R Seahawk lifts survivors from the water. The remaining parasite pods are secured and brought onto the deck of the USS Carney. When the first pod is opened with a robotic cutter, the team does not find ordinary drone components. They find high-resolution digital maps. The files show exact GPS coordinates and structural weak points for major desalination plants across the UAE and Saudi Arabia. This was not just an attack at sea, it was a pre-targeting mission. The next phase would have threatened the water supply for millions of people. The invisible pipeline was actually a countdown to a regional humanitarian crisis. The USS Carney turns back toward open water, towing the tanker behind it. The mission is complete, but the shadow conflict is not over. The enemy is rational. The enemy is capable. They watched how we fought today, but we recorded them too. The A-10C Thunderbolt and the two F-35B Lightning IIs form a tight V shape over the carrier. Behind them, the enemy is confused, exposed, and forced to retreat. The Americans know the truth. The side that sees everything is the side that decides how the story ends. Before you go, there is one detail about the A-10C Thunderbolt that most people miss. Everyone talks about the massive cannon and the titanium armor, but the real reason that pilot could hold steady through an S-300 radar lock comes down to something called manual reversion. The Warthog is one of the only modern jets that can lose its hydraulic systems and still be flown. If the electronics are damaged or the hydraulic lines are cut, the pilot can flip a switch and control the aircraft through steel cables and pulleys, almost like an old tractor with wings. That simple, rugged backup system is why the A-10C could keep flying when a more delicate aircraft might have had no options left. At 2:31 a.m., the Luchas, carrying 110 pounds of RDX-based payload, immediately sees the opening. They drop lower, accelerate, and drive straight into the oil station's most vulnerable valve section. The kinetic impact tears into the pressurized pipeline system, triggering a Bleave-style rapid vapor expansion event. And that leaves one question hanging over everything. What if the swarm had launched just 60 seconds earlier, while our sonar was still confused by the underwater pods? The margin for error was almost nothing. We held the line today, but the sea does not care about reputation. It does not care about past victories. It only cares who is still standing when the smoke clears. Stay sharp, stay ready. We'll see you on the next one.